8. The moral of the story is there is always a moral of the story for a future world champion, and nobody knows what it is because who can think of morals when there's so much flying to do? I can't lie. At first, I was confused. At second, I was sad my dad wasn't Carl Lewis, but also happy he wasn't Carl Lewis because I wouldn't want a world champion to see me that way. Because if he had, he might have got the wrong idea. Might think I ain't no future world champion. I was also happy my dad wasn't Carl Lewis because my dad is my dad and I hadn't seen him in weeks. I opened my eyes at the sound of his voice, and from what I could tell through the teary burn blur, he looked pretty much the same. Tired for sure, who wouldn't be? But other than that, he looked like he always looked. Like me, like him, like me. Round headed, with squirrely cheeks and a nose that, if you stuck a pin in it, might pop. He wore sunglasses and a baggy burgundy suit like he'd come out of the track to go dancing. Like he was gonna join Tori for salsa. And salsa. My father's gold chain, the one he never took off, hung on the outside of his shirt, the TB and R charm dangling from it as he squatted over me, digging his fingers into my legs, massaging them, trying his best to get the wild horses to stop bucking. Dad? I winced and squinced, the sun at just the right position to scream in my face. I'm here, he said, trying to work Charlie out your muscles. Did I blow it? I asked, gritting my teeth in pain. Blow what? My shot with the scout, Mr. Anderson, I said in 3 grunts. That ain't important right now, kid. Dad worked the heel of his hand into my thigh. Tori passed him a water bottle, which Dad then passed to me. Here, hydrate, he ordered. And after a few minutes, I could stand and walk. But once I realized Mr. Anderson was nowhere to be found, I suddenly wished I was nowhere to be found too. Nowhere to be seen or heard, hobbling across the track, every part of me mad. My body mad, my mind mad, and also made up. I'd ruined my chances of running in the Junior Olympics, which ruined my day. Coach Marvin was talking to all my teammates who were doing their cool down stretches. They all clapped for me, cheered like I'd either won something or survived something, but I knew I hadn't won nothing. And even though I appreciated the applause, I didn't join them in the circle. I couldn't. My body had had enough, and instead of trying to work out what was left of my kings, I threw an arm around my dad and limped toward the bleachers. Hear that, Odie? Coach Marvin called out after the claps cooled down. Mr. Anderson said he'll let us know what he thinks next week. I nodded, tired not to think the worst. Also, don't forget, tomorrow morning we washing cars. Fundraiser in the parking lot of Men's Lodge over in Ardwick Ave. With each step, my body returned more and more to itself. My legs slowly became my legs again. My feet became feet. The fire inside had burned out. The horses were done galloping, and I could let go of my father, only for him to look at me with, "What in the world?" in his eyes. "What?" I asked. "Nothing." He sat beside me on the bleachers, stretched his legs out. "How was the trip?" I asked, unlacing my track shoes. "Busy, as usual," he said, still staring at me like he had a staring problem. It was making me more uncomfortable than I already was after embarrassing myself on the track. "What?" I asked again, this time with a little extra on it. "Nothing," he said again. "Just what's up with your face?" "My face? I'm just bummed. Like I really wanted to show Mr. No, I mean, you got 2 black eyes, Odie," Dad said, his face tightening. "You been fighting? Tell me you haven't been fighting while I was gone. But if you have been, The other kid better look worse. No, no, it's. And these band-aids. And where are your eyebrows? My father barreled on. Did the kid you were fighting rip your eyebrows out, Odie? Because if so, I forgive you for losing. And you let me know who he is so I can speak to his father. And maybe his therapist. Dad looked over at Coach Marvin, who just shrugged. Dad, no, no. I tried settling him. I tried to cut my hair because this kid Quentin was snapping on me at school, and I messed it up, and this is how Ma fixed it. And then I tried to fix her fix because I knew Mr. Anderson was gonna be here and I'd had this dream, and I can't really explain it all, but these used to be eyebrows. Felt like the right thing to do. I could tell by my father's face that he had no idea what I was talking about, and I had no idea how to help him understand. He glanced over at Coach Marvin again, hoping his best friend might have some help for him, but this time Coach Marvin turned around and pretended to ignore us, helped the other guys off the track, patted their backs, good job them, everyone except Tori, who ain't need to be helped up. He bounced up, no problem, and bolted from the track. Bolted by the bleachers, bolted right past me and Dad. Tori, you not walking with us? Dad asked, even though it was obvious Tori wasn't walking nowhere, he was running somewhere, and that somewhere was to Rashonda. Not today, Coach Otis. Gotta see a girl about a taco. Dad tisked, probably wondering why he couldn't understand anything his son or his might as well be son was talking about. And instead of trying, he just grabbed his backpack, which had been sitting next to me, flung it over his shoulder, and smirked. What's in there? I asked, noticing the belly of the bag was sticking out like Dad's shoes after too much beer. Something I brought back from my trip, he said. For you. For me? Yeah, I'll give it to you, but not until we talk about the moral of the story. Ugh. Let me explain. My dad loves to talk about the moral of the story. I swear it's his favorite thing to do. At least that's what it seems to me like. Sure, he loved coaching and shouting, "The best never rest," but that was only on the track. Moral of the story, that was an everywhere thing. On the track, off the track, down the street, up the street, at the store, on the phone, in the house, on the couch, at the table, on the front steps. Any place was the right place and any time was the right time to talk about the moral of the story. It just depended on what the story was. And by story, I'm not talking about an actual story, not like a novel or a fairy tale. The stories Dad wanted to talk about were usually moments where I did something stupid that landed me in a stupid situation, which usually had me looking stupid. Usually had my folks scratching their heads, wondering if I was, as my father says, a few jacks short of a jackpot, a few pots short of a meal, a few dishes short of a holiday feast, a few feasts short of a calendar year, and a few years short of being grown, which is why Dad went on like this about the moral of the story. It was his way of telling me what I was supposed to be learning from whatever the experience or mistake was. The lesson in it all, whether I wanted to hear it or not, or learn it or not. To me, the moral of the story is don't let nobody embarrass you so much that it convinces you to embarrass yourself, Dad said. We'd started our journey home, the park disappearing in the distance as we turned onto the avenue. So, what you saying is I should have punched him? We'd stopped at a fruit stand for an orange. I peeled the skin from it first and began peeling the slices from it to eat one by one. I'm not saying that, Dad said. I mean, I'm not saying that either. Then he caught himself. No, I'm not saying that. That's what I probably would have done, but you ain't like me, and that's what I like most about you. So, I'm gonna go with no, you shouldn't have hit him, but you ain't have no comeback? I'm not always quick with the comebacks, especially in the moment. I got a lot of comebacks for him now, but they 2 days late. So maybe the moral of the story is have comebacks on deck at all times. Be ready so you ain't gotta get ready, or shave off your eyebrows and hair and look like a turtle, Dad razzed. A turtle? The fastest turtle in the world. Dad clipped the joke, reached out his hand for a piece of orange. Maybe that's the moral of the story. But that can't be the moral when that's not really what happened, I explained. On the avenue, everybody was stopping and slapping Dad Five. Every kind of person from the suits to the suspects talking to him like he's somebody. He moved with a bop, an intentional limp that everybody in my neighborhood walks with. Like all black men are recovering from a Charlie horse. Too much running, like they carrying a bunch of weight but are cool enough to only hold it on one side of the body, like they got the whole world hanging off the end of a shoulder strap. What happened was Quentin was cracking on my hairline because it was messed up. And the reason it was messed up is because I needed a haircut. So the real moral of the story is I needed to go to the barber shop before the jokes, and I needed to still go after the jokes. But Ma wouldn't take me. I know, she hates that place, Dad said as we hit the block, the barber shop in view. We walked through the handful of hustlers who chomped sandwiches between sales and were posted up outside before going back into their headquarters. Each one spoke to my father, either with a what's up or a dap or a head nod. I scanned them for cool. Hats, cool. Gold-framed sunglasses, cool. Rope chains, cool. Tracksuits, cool. Watches, cool. Rings, cool. Gold teeth, cool. Sneakers, cool. Exactly. So you agree that that's the moral of the story? I asked, happy to be right for a change. Ain't nothing moral going on in that barber shop, Odie. Not around here. Too much slick talk. Too many storytellers who love to lie in bad language. Too much business, and their business ain't your business. Dad put his hand on my head, skin to skin. But we'll figure it out. When we crossed the street, we heard someone calling out for us, someone behind us trying to get our attention. Goose. We stopped at the corner, waited for him to catch up. Where are you coming from? I asked, giving him 5. I was in the store, Goose stammered, like he always does. He got a stutter. Had it ever since the Richardsons moved into Glass Manor 5 years ago. So ever since I've known him. I started calling him Goose because of the way he juts his neck whenever he's trying to get a word out. Not to be mean or nothing, but because Goose is a cooler name than Gordon, and now everybody but the old folks call him that, even his own brother. I saw you, but you ain't seen me. He turned to my father. What's up, Mr. O? He said, reaching his hand out. What's up, Gordon? Dad, obviously one of the old folks, gave him a 5. You about to lose your money? He pointed to Goose's blue uniform pants, cash spilling from one of the pockets. Oh, thanks, Mr. O, Goose said, stuffing it back down. That's left over from your lunch money? Dad asked, but the tone of his voice was pokey. Yeah, Goose replied, awkward. Where y'all was going? To the house, I thumped behind me, just trying to figure out the moral of the story. Uh-oh, Goose said. Which story? The story of all this. I pretended to wax my face and head. Oh, I got that one. The moral is everything your parents make look easy is really dangerous. Goose shrugged like this was the obvious answer. And what about big brothers, Gordon? Dad asked. What about what they make look easy? Come on, Dad, I said, nipping whatever he was getting at. Goose just stood there, tight-faced. How about this? Dad backed off. How about you come with us to the house and help us nail down the moral? I feel like we're so close to getting it. 3 heads are better than 1. Dad looked over Goose's shoulder at the guys, now passing bottle back and forth, a swig for swig, like brothers. Plus, I want you to see what I got Odie from my trip. You'll both get a kick out of it. We lived on the 3rd floor, street side. The other side was the alley side, which meant when you looked out the big window, you saw the trash cans and rats. We had the better view, the view of the street where I could sit and watch the people stroll by and the cars cruise by and the block parties and summer shenanigans. I could see the church parade on Sundays and the party parade on Saturday nights and the weekend winners on Friday afternoon and the Monday mopers trekking up to the bus stop in stiff suits and clacky shoes. On the street side, I could see it all, could see the neighborhood breathing, whether gasping for air or catching its wind. I could see it inhaling and exhaling every single day, fighting for its life, figuring itself out. Once Dad, Goose, and me got inside, we all kicked our shoes off. Me and Goose hit the kitchen for a drink, and the moment I closed the refrigerator door, carton of juice in my hand, Dad was standing there with a plastic bag in his. These are for you, he said. I put the juice down and opened the bag, and there they were. There they were. They, them, those. Air Jordan 3s. I passed the juice to Goose, whose eyes were as big as mine. Put 'em on, Goose said. Put 'em on. I couldn't breathe, but I didn't need to in order to slide my feet in them, which I did immediately. With no breath, they were a little big, but that ain't matter. You can feel it, can't you? Goose asked. Then he looked at my father. He can feel it, Mr. O. Feel what? Dad asked, Goose not making sense to him either. I can feel the fly in these. I can feel the air, I explained. You want to try 'em on? Goose usually had all the sneakers because his brother always made sure of it, but even he ain't have these yet. Yeah. No, Dad groaned. Shoes are personal. You can't just put on another man's shoes. These are yours. They just for you. Why you don't want me to fly, Mr. O? Nobody's flying, Goose. I'm about to, I said, still staring down at them. I imagined light beams coming off them and was scared I might go blind if I kept staring, but I kept staring. I kept staring and staring and staring. And while I was stuck on stare, Goose, with the carton still in his grip, reached his hand over his head as if he was dunking like Jordan, slamming grape juice. You know you're still on the floor, right? Dad took the juice from Goose and opened the fridge, which was when he realized nothing was in there but peanut butter, jelly, bread, and the grape juice he'd just put back. Of course, I'm still on the floor, Goose said. I ain't got the sneakers on. Odie's on the floor too, all 10 toes. Dad pointed at my feet. For now, Goose said, but that's just because he ain't learned how to activate him yet. My brother said after he charged his up, he could dunk. Goose, I know your brother. He 5'0" with toddler hands. Poor baby ain't never dunked a day in his life. I believe him, Dad. I jumped in. I told my father all about Mr. Jefferson, who I'd just seen do a 360 dunk, and even he agreed that it had to have been the shoes because ain't nothing about a math teacher that says they supposed to be able to do that. Your math teacher got these? Goose was just as surprised as I was. Yep. Were they clean? Dad asked. Spotless, I told him, which sent him and Goose into a relay raced speech about how to wear mine. I had no idea these shoes came with so many instructions. Having Jordans is like having a puppy, and I ain't never had a puppy. You gotta walk with your toes curled under, but also keep the back of your foot as flat as possible, Dad explained. Then he passed the baton to Goose. Also, don't ever choke him, Goose said. Choke him? Don't tie them, Dad translated. You don't want to put all that pressure on this soft leather. Next thing, when it rains, don't wear them. I'd rather you get your feet dirty than these kicks. And if you have to wear them, put bags over them. Clear plastic bags like Ziplocs. That way everybody can still see the shoe, Goose instructed. And you have to clean them, Dad drilled. But we'll get to that later. Is that it? I asked, hoping they'd say yes. Else I'd have to get a pencil and paper. No, Dad shut me down. There's one more thing. The most important thing. Don't let nobody, I mean nobody, steal them from you. If anybody ever asks you what size shoe you wear, you look them dead in their face and say, I wear your size. Then ball your fists up. Dad's face became all knuckles, no smile. But if they're trying to steal them, why would I tell them I wear their size? I asked. Wouldn't that make them want to steal them more? Nah, it'll let them know you ain't scared, he said. But what if I am? Well then, I guess you'll come home barefoot with the same kind of eyes you got tonight. It didn't make sense what he was talking about, because why wouldn't I just run, especially since I'm future world champion fast and I'll be faster with the Jordans, and make it home with the shoes and my regular brown eyes. I also didn't know what he was talking about because I still hadn't remembered the makeup that was still smeared all over my face. Yeah, I was gonna ask about that, Goose said, about the smeared makeup. But I figured maybe it was some kind of track thing I know about, like how football players put that black stuff under their eyes, warrior stuff. He turned back toward the fridge. Also, can I still get some juice? As my father took care of Goose's drink, I swiped my eyes, saw the black on my fingertips, and went to the bathroom to wash up. And when I came back, smearless and finally without band-aids, Goose and my dad were sitting in the living room, juice sipping, watching a tape we'd watched more times than any of us could count. The 1984 Olympics, Carl Lewis running the 100-meter dash, my father leaning in, giving Goose the blues as usual. What I don't know is why you won't just come out to the track with us, Dad said. Your mother would be so relieved to see you out there. He'd been home for barely an hour and was already recruiting, even though we all knew Goose was unrecruitable. But Dad was right about Goose's mom, Miss Richardson, being relieved if he would just come out to the track with us. She was the nicest lady on the block, but couldn't control her kids, only because poor baby was the one bringing all the money in the house. Whenever my mother was working late or my dad was out of town and there was nothing to eat, or if I just couldn't take another bite of a TV dinner, I would go next door and Miss Richardson would whip me up something tasty, because there was always food over there. I just knew better than to always ask, because my mother ain't like me to be no beggar. But sometimes I had to. Come on, Mr. O. You know I can't. You can. Dad sat on the arm of the couch, prepping himself to watch the race. Carl Lewis tying his shoes flashed across the screen. But only when you're ready. Leave him alone, Dad, I said, coming into the room and the conversation. Dad plucked Goose's head and in his best villain voice said, Never! On the TV, the gun went off. Carl Lewis shot out like a cannon, and 10 seconds later the race was over. My father pressed rewind on the VCR for another watch. It's what we do. Watch, then watch again. Wait till I make it to the Olympics, I gasped up. I'm eating everybody for dinner. I can't wait, kid. I also can't wait to eat this for dinner, Dad said, holding up the menu of our favorite Chinese restaurant, which happened to be the only restaurant not named after what they were serving, Golden Palace. Now that I think about it, would have been nice if a palace was on the menu. If you could just order one, maybe that's another thing I would buy if I had all the money in the world. Dad passed me the menu, but I already knew what I wanted. What I always got whenever we ordered Chinese, which was always on the day he got home from work trips. You eating, Goose? You know you're welcome, my dad said. I, I, I'm good. Dad shrugged, then picked up the phone to call it in. Hello? Yeah, can I make an order, please? For delivery. Let me get egg foo young, extra gravy, and an egg drop soup, he said. Why you always need so much egg? I asked. Boy, because it's good for you, he fired back. What you want? You know what I want, I said. And also shrimp lo mein and a Sprite. Dad pulled the phone away from his face. What you think your mama want? Chicken fried rice? I nodded. Yeah, and a small chicken fried rice and some egg rolls. By the time the food came, we'd already rewatched the 100-meter dash 10 times, at least, over and over again, analyzing the run. Goose not nearly as hype as Dad and me, but a good sport about it all. Ain't like he wasn't used to it. Sometimes he'd even mimic the announcer. The Olympics and Carl Lewis have been ballyhooed for so many months. He loved the word ballyhooed, even though it tripped him up, and every time we rewound the tape and heard it, we'd joke about it. My mother showed up right as the delivery man did, and as she came into the apartment, she was just as surprised to see my father as I had been when he'd showed up at the park earlier. Oh, I didn't know you were coming back, Ma said, kinda stuck. Yeah, I got back today. Dad handed me the money to pay the delivery man so he could stand and greet her. Leave a tip, he said over her shoulder as they hugged. Well, sorta hugged. It was how they always did when he came home, like they'd forgotten how to, like their arms forgot how to wrap around the other's body, how to hold. You eat? He asked her, taking the bag of food from me and walking toward the kitchen. Of course not, she said, hugging and kissing me hello while also examining my forehead, the cut scabbed over. Took the band-aids off? Yep, I said, still bubbling from the shoes. It's healing nicely, she said, kissing me again. Then she hugged Goose. And how you doing, second son? That's what she called Goose sometimes. That and Gordon. And Tori was third son. That and Tornado when she had jokes. Good, he said. You sure? She asked. Guess what? I stopped whatever questions were coming, which I knew would be about Goose's brother. Dad got me some Jordans. I showed Ma the shoes by kicking my feet up so she could see. Because, of course, I was still wearing them. In my house? She asked, frowning, each side of her mouth melting for a different reason. One half of the frown was because she didn't want me wearing Jordans. Kids were dying over them, and she ain't want me to be one of them. The other half of her mouth was frowning at the fact that I had shoes on at all. This was a no shoes in the house. But I tried to explain. These were brand new, never been worn outside, fresh out the box. I mean, bag. Not even a cuff, I said. Okay, well, where's the box? My mother asked. I threw it away, Dad said quick. My mother rolled her eyes. You threw it away? She asked. So what? We can't take him back? Why would we take... Dad came closer, reached for her elbow, but she pulled away. Odie, take 'em off. There was a snap in her voice. Now. She put a period on it. I carefully removed the shoes and Ma turned them over to check the bottoms. They were a little dirty, but not dirty dirty. That ain't from nothing but these floors in here. Dad attempted to save me, then popped back into the living room with plates of food. My house ain't dirty, Ma huffed. I know, Dad said. Can we all just sit down and eat? I've been gone for what feels like forever and just want some egg foo young with my young fool and my young fool egg and his mama. My mother brought the shoes over to the safe cabinet where she spun the lock. Ma, I need those, I said, and I'll give them back to you when it's time to wear them. She opened the cabinet and placed the shoes inside, closed it back and locked it. But it's gonna be time to wear them tomorrow. Tomorrow is Saturday. You won't need 'em. She was right. The next day definitely wasn't a day for Jordans. It was a day for washing cars, and Dad said to avoid rain, and the water hose was the same thing. The car wash was a fundraiser for our team. We were trying to raise money for new uniforms. The old ones weren't even really uniforms, just t-shirts with the letters DEFENDERS ironed on it. But I always liked putting mine on because it made me feel like a pro, like I was part of a team of special people and was destined for something bigger someday. But someday soon, we were hoping for proper jerseys and shorts, which meant we had to raise money. Dad, Ma, Goose, and me ate, even though Goose said he ain't want nothing to eat. Watched Carl run the 100, and then we rewound. We sat more, ate more, watched Carl run more, and rewound. And again, each time my father and I cheered like it was the first time we'd seen it. Each time my mother humphed more and more, smacking her teeth louder and louder, annoyed. What's your problem? My father finally asked. And I already knew the night was about to change. My mother asked my father if she could speak with him in the bedroom, and I knew that once they went in there, it was best for me to let Goose out and turn the TV up because an argument was coming. Some kind of screaming and yelling and cussing at each other. It's not that they did it all the time, but usually just before the business trips or right after. This kind of thing happened. I'd gotten used to it over the years, and I knew I couldn't really do much to stop it. Plus, it would be over after a while. It was just part of being gone for so long for work, I figured. But in the amount of time it took me to get to the TV to rewind and turn up the volume, the footage had already jumped forward. It had gone from Carl's victory point sprint to Carl standing at a different starting line, waiting for the pistol. What's this? I mumbled, eyes glued as Carl took off down the track, this time without a pistol start, this time like a prancing horse, not the Charlie, the Carl kind. And once the prance became a gallop, Carl jumped, leapt, flew through the air into a pit of sand. Long jump? I'd never seen him do the long jump before. I never watched the past 100 because that's the race I run. The race I'd been running since I was a kid. The race my father ran when he was young. But seeing Carl Lewis do the long jump had me as mesmerized as his sprint did 4 years ago when I saw it for the first time. I rewound it, just that part, watched it all happen again, the step and leap and liftoff, the running through the air and the landing in the sand, grains of it flying up all around him. I sat as close as possible to the TV screen, right up onto the VCR, so I could watch the jump, then watch the jump, then watch the jump, my fingers slapping the rewind button while my parents pretended to hate each other loudly down the hall.